They fired me the week of my wedding, after 15 years of loyalty. So I sent one file that changed everything. 15 years, that's how long I'd given Meridian Consulting Group. 15 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and canceled vacation plans. 15 years of being the person everyone called when a project was falling apart or a client was threatening to sue. My name is Harper, and I was Meridian's go-to project director. The one who caught mistakes before they became disasters. The one who'd saved the company millions by spotting contract loopholes and compliance issues that others missed. Harper's our secret weapon. Mr. Keene, my boss, would tell clients with his practiced smile. She sees problems before they happen. I'd started at Meridian fresh out of college, eager and naive. I'd worked my way up from junior analyst to project director, earning every promotion through late nights and weekend work. I'd never called in sick, never missed a deadline, never let the company down. In 5 days, I was supposed to marry Logan, my firefighter fiancé who'd been patient through years of me prioritizing work over everything else. We'd postponed our wedding twice because of urgent projects that only I could handle. This time will be different, I'd promised Logan. After the wedding, I'll set better boundaries. But as I sat in my office that Tuesday morning, reviewing final reports before my bridal shower, I had no idea that my 15 years of loyalty were about to mean absolutely nothing. My computer chimed with a calendar notification that would change my life forever. Urgent HR meeting, conference room B, 2 p.m., Harper Mitchell only. The email felt wrong from the moment I opened it. In 15 years at Meridian, I'd never been called to an urgent HR meeting, without knowing why. I was the person who usually sat in on HR meetings to discuss other people's problems. My best friend Riley worked in HR, and she would have given me a heads up about anything involving me. We'd started at Meridian the same week, and had been inseparable ever since. She knew every detail of my wedding planning, and had taken tomorrow off to help with final preparations. I walked down the hall to Riley's cubicle, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floor. She was on the phone, but when she saw me approaching, her face went pale. "Can I call you back?" she said quickly, hanging up. "Harper, what are you doing here?" "I got a weird meeting invite. Conference room B at 2. Do you know what it's about?" Riley's eyes darted around the office. Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me into the empty break room. "Harper, I'm not supposed to tell you this," she whispered. "But they called me this morning asking for your personnel file. All of it, including performance reviews and project assignments." "Why would they need that?" "I don't know, but Mr. Keene was in Linda Rowe's office for an hour this morning with the door closed. Then Linda called our department head and said something about handling the Harper situation quietly." "The Harper situation? After 15 years of perfect service, I was now a situation?" "Riley, you're scaring me." She looked around again, then leaned closer. "Harper, I think you need to be prepared for anything in that meeting." As I walked back to my office, my phone buzzed with a text from Logan. "Can't wait to marry you this weekend, babe. You're going to be the most beautiful bride ever." If only he knew that in 2 hours, everything might fall apart. Conference room B felt like a courtroom. Linda Rowe, our CEO, sat at the head of the mahogany table in her signature black blazer, her expression unreadable. Beside her sat Janet from HR, a woman I'd worked with for years, but who now avoided eye contact. Mr. Keene wasn't there, which was strange since he was my direct supervisor. "Harper, please sit down," Linda said, her voice cold and professional. No warmth, no acknowledgement of my years of service or my upcoming wedding. I sat across from them, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. "Harper, we've made the difficult decision to terminate your employment with Meridian Consulting Group, effective immediately." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your position is being eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring. We appreciate your years of service, but your last day is today." I stared at her in disbelief. "Linda, I don't understand. My performance reviews have always been excellent. I just finished the Morrison project ahead of schedule and under budget. What restructuring?" "The decision is final, Harper. Janet will walk you through the paperwork." "But I'm getting married this weekend. I have vacation time scheduled. I have active projects that need." Your projects will be reassigned, Linda cut me off. Someone will box up your personal items and have them sent to you. Janet slid a manila folder across the table. This contains your termination paperwork and information about COBRA coverage. You have 30 minutes to collect essential personal items from your office. 30 minutes. 15 years reduced to 30 minutes. Is there severance? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Unfortunately, no, Linda said. The termination is without cause, but due to the restructuring, we're unable to offer severance packages. As I sat there in shock, one thought kept running through my mind. This wasn't random. Something else was going on. But I had no idea just how right I was. The 30-minute countdown felt like a death march. I walked back to my office in a daze, passing colleagues who had no idea their longest-serving project director had just been fired 5 days before her wedding. My office looked the same as it had an hour ago. Awards on the walls, family photos on my desk, 15 years of memories contained in a space I'd called home longer than any apartment I'd lived in. I started packing mechanically. Personal photos, my favorite coffee mug, the small succulent plant Riley had given me for my birthday. Everything else, my files, my notes, my project documentation, belonged to Meridian. Harper, I turned to see Marcus from accounting standing in my doorway. Is everything okay? Riley said you were in an HR meeting. I've been let go, I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. What? That's impossible. You're like the backbone of this place. Before I could respond, Mr. Keene appeared beside Marcus. Marcus, I need you to return to your desk. Harper, how are you coming along with packing? His tone was businesslike, almost cheerful, like he was discussing lunch plans instead of the destruction of my career. Why? I asked him directly. 15 years, Mr. Keene. I've never given you a reason to doubt my work. He looked uncomfortable for the first time. Harper, this was a business decision made above my pay grade. I'm sorry. Above your pay grade? You're the one who recommended me for every promotion I've received. Please finish packing. Security will escort you out when you're ready. Security escort. Like I was a criminal instead of their most loyal employee. As Mr. Keene walked away, I noticed something I'd never seen before. He looked relieved. Like my termination had solved a problem for him. What problem could I have possibly been causing? I was sealing the last box when Riley appeared in my doorway, tears streaming down her face. This is insane, she whispered, closing my office door behind her. Harper, I've been asking questions, and something is really wrong here. What do you mean? Your termination paperwork was prepared 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, Harper. They've been planning this. My stomach dropped. 3 weeks ago? But I've been working on the Morrison project. I've had meetings scheduled. They let me use vacation time for wedding planning. It gets worse, Riley said, glancing at the door. I overheard Janet on the phone with legal. They're worried about something you might know or might have seen. What could I possibly know that would? I stopped mid-sentence as a memory hit me. 2 months ago, I'd been reviewing compliance documentation for a routine audit when I'd noticed irregularities in our government contracts. Billing discrepancies that didn't make sense. I'd flagged them for review and sent the report to Mr. Keene. He'd told me it was a data entry error and that he'd handle it personally. Riley, remember that government contract audit I did in March? The one where you found those billing errors? Mr. Keene said he'd fixed everything, but what if he didn't? What if those weren't errors? Riley's eyes widened. Harper, if there was actual fraud and you were the one who discovered it, they'd want me gone before anyone started asking questions. I have an idea, Riley said quietly, but it's risky. Are you willing to fight back? Looking around my empty office, thinking about my ruined career and my wedding in 5 days, I felt something I'd never felt before toward Meridian. Anger. What did you have in mind? I need you to trust me, Riley said, pulling out her phone. Can you meet me at Murphy's pub after you leave? There's something I need to show you, but not here. 2 hours later, I sat in a corner booth at Murphy's, still wearing my professional blazer, but feeling like I was in costume. Riley slid into the seat across from me, clutching a manila envelope. Before I show you this, I need you to know that this could get both of us in trouble, she said. But after what they did to you, I don't care. She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. Remember that audit report you submitted in March? The one Mr. Keene said he'd handle? Yeah? He never submitted it to the government. Instead, he buried it. But as an HR representative, I have legitimate access to all personnel files and work products created by employees. I made copies before your file was archived. I took the papers with shaking hands. It was my report, complete with all the evidence I'd found of systematic overbilling on federal contracts, millions of dollars charged for services never provided, equipment never delivered. Riley, this is evidence of major fraud. It gets worse. Look at these email chains I found in the legal compliance folders. She showed me printed emails between Mr. Keene and Linda Rowe, discussing how to manage the Harper situation and ensure problematic audits don't reach government oversight. How did you access these? Routine compliance review. It's part of my job to monitor email communications for policy violations. These emails showed up in my weekly report, and I realized they were talking about burying your audit findings. This is proof they knew about the fraud and chose to cover it up. Harper, I copied these legally as part of my HR responsibilities. If you decide to report this, you'd be using evidence that was properly obtained through internal compliance procedures. The moral weight of what Riley was showing me was enormous. This wasn't just about my firing anymore. It was about a systematic effort to defraud taxpayers and cover up the evidence. What do we do with this? Riley leaned forward. I have a contact. Someone who might be very interested in what we found. What kind of contact? The kind that investigates federal contractor fraud. Suddenly, my termination felt like the beginning of something much bigger than either of us had imagined. I drove home in silence, the manila envelope sitting on my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. Logan's truck was already in our driveway. He'd gotten off his shift early to help with wedding preparations. I found him in the kitchen, surrounded by wedding favors and place cards, looking more excited than I'd seen him in months. Hey, beautiful. He jumped up and spun me around. How was your last day before vacation? Ready to become Mrs. Harper Matthews? I burst into tears. Whoa, hey, Logan said, immediately serious. He guided me to the couch and pulled me close. What's wrong? Cold feet? Because if you're having second thoughts? They fired me, I said into his chest. What? He pulled back to look at me. Who fired you? Meridian. Today, 5 days before our wedding, they terminated me. 15 years, Logan. 15 years, and they just threw me away. Logan's jaw clenched. As a firefighter, he understood loyalty and brotherhood. The idea of abandoning someone who'd given their all was foreign to him. Did they give you a reason? Restructuring. But Riley thinks it's because I discovered something I wasn't supposed to know. I told him everything. The audit, the fraud, the files Riley had shown me. Logan listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. So what are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I don't know. Riley has a contact at the Department of Justice, but if I do this, there's no going back. They'll know it was me. Harper, look at me. Logan took my hands in his. I fell in love with you because you always do the right thing, even when it's hard. You've spent 15 years protecting that company's reputation. Maybe it's time someone protected the people they're stealing from. But what if it ruins everything? What if they come after us? Then we'll face it together. That's what marriage means, right? Looking into his eyes, I knew what I had to do. Not just for me, but for every taxpayer whose money Meridian had stolen. Call Riley, I said. Tell her I want to meet her contact. Logan smiled. That's my girl. But neither of us had any idea what we were about to unleash. Riley's contact turned out to be a woman named Special Agent Patricia Kim from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. We met the next evening at a quiet restaurant downtown, Riley serving as the go-between. Agent Kim was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. She ordered coffee and got straight to business. Miss Mitchell? Riley tells me you have information about potential contractor fraud involving federal funds. I don't just have information, I said, sliding the envelope across the table. I have documentation. Agent Kim opened the envelope and began reading. After several minutes, she looked up, her expression unreadable. Miss Mitchell, do you understand what you're alleging here? That my former employer has been systematically defrauding the federal government for at least 5 years. The dollar amount involved would make this one of the largest contractor fraud cases we've investigated this year. I was fired 3 days ago for discovering this information, I added. The timing wasn't coincidental. Agent Kim nodded slowly. We've actually been looking into Meridian Consulting for several months based on tips from other sources. What you've provided could be the missing piece we needed. Other sources? I can't go into details, but you're not the first person to contact us with concerns about their billing practices. My heart started racing. So there's already an investigation? A preliminary one, but with your documentation and your insider knowledge of their operations, we might have enough for a full criminal investigation. She closed the envelope carefully. Miss Mitchell, if you agree to cooperate with our investigation, I need you to understand that this will likely become public. There will be media attention, legal proceedings, and significant scrutiny of your role. I thought about my wedding in 3 days, about the life Logan and I were planning to build together. Agent Kim, $42 million belongs to taxpayers, people who work hard and trust their government to spend their money responsibly. Is that a yes? That's a yes. But I had no idea that my cooperation would set in motion events that would make my wedding day unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Agent Kim gave me specific instructions. I was to upload all the documentation to a secure federal server using credentials she provided. The upload had to happen from my personal computer to establish a clear chain of custody. Once you submit these files, she warned, the investigation becomes official. There's no taking it back. I sat at my kitchen table Thursday night, Logan beside me for moral support, staring at my laptop screen. The upload portal looked innocuous, just a simple form requesting case number, agent contact, and file attachments. You sure about this? Logan asked, squeezing my hand. I'm sure. I began uploading files one by one. The audit report that had started everything. Copies of the fraudulent contracts Riley had retrieved. Email chains I'd saved showing Mr. Keen's instructions to bury my findings. Each file upload took several minutes, and with each completion, I felt like I was crossing a bridge I could never cross back. The final file was a summary document I'd prepared, outlining my 15 years at Meridian, my role in discovering the fraud, and the timeline of my subsequent termination. It was my statement to history about why I'd chosen to speak up. Upload complete, the screen finally read. Your submission has been received and assigned case number WC 2024-1847. Agent Kim will contact you within 48 hours. I closed the laptop and looked at Logan. It's done. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, like I just jumped out of an airplane without knowing if my parachute would open. Logan pulled me close. Whatever happens next, we'll handle it together. Tomorrow was our rehearsal dinner. In 2 days, we'd be married. I tried to focus on those happy thoughts, but a nagging feeling told me that my upload had just changed everything. I had no idea how right I was. Friday night at Bella Vista Restaurant, surrounded by our families and closest friends, I almost forgot about the federal investigation I'd just triggered. Almost. Logan's firefighter buddies regaled us with embarrassing stories about his rookie years. My college roommates shared memories of me studying until 3 a.m. and surviving on coffee and determination. Everyone was laughing, toasting, celebrating the love story that was about to become official. To Harper, my father said, raising his glass, who taught us all that loyalty and hard work always pay off. If only he knew how complicated that sentiment had become. Riley, my maid of honor, had been quiet all evening. She kept checking her phone and glancing at me with worried expressions. During dessert, she pulled me aside. Harper, I need to tell you something, she whispered. I overheard a conversation at work today. What kind of conversation? Mr. Keen was on the phone with someone, and he sounded panicked. He kept saying things like, she knows too much, and we need to control the narrative. A chill ran down my spine. Do you think they know what I did? I don't know, but he mentioned your name several times. And Harper, he said something about making sure you couldn't cause any more problems. What does that mean? I don't know, but it didn't sound good. Logan appeared beside us, concern on his face. Everything okay over here? You both look like you've seen a ghost. Just wedding nerves, I lied, forcing a smile. But as we drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the calm before my wedding was actually the calm before a much bigger storm. Agent Kim had said she'd contact me within 48 hours. That meant I'd probably hear from her tomorrow, my wedding day. Somehow, I didn't think that was a coincidence. I woke up at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning with butterflies in my stomach that had nothing to do with wedding nerves. Logan had spent the night at his brother's house. Bad luck for the groom to see the bride before the ceremony, so I was alone with my thoughts. My phone had been silent all night. No calls from Agent Kim, no mysterious messages, no signs that my life was about to implode. Maybe I'd been overthinking everything. Maybe today would just be about love and celebration. Riley arrived at 8 a.m. with coffee and pastries, looking much more relaxed than she had the night before. "Okay, bride," she announced. "Today is about you and Logan. No work thoughts, no drama, just happiness." By 10 a.m., my hair and makeup team had transformed our house into a salon. My mother fussed over every detail while my bridesmaids took selfies and shared mimosas. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's wedding preparation from outside my body. "Harper, you look absolutely radiant," my mom said, tears in her eyes as the makeup artist applied the finishing touches. At noon, I stepped into my wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown I'd chosen over a year ago when life was simpler and my biggest worry was whether Logan would remember to pick up his tuxedo. "Oh my God," Riley breathed, "you look like a princess." For a moment, surrounded by the women I loved most, wearing the dress of my dreams, I forgot about everything else. This was my wedding day. Nothing else mattered. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but somehow I knew exactly who it was. "Harper, it's Agent Kim. We need to talk. Something's happened." My perfect wedding day was about to become anything but perfect. 3 months after our perfect wedding in Tulum, I was back at work for my compliance consulting clients when my phone rang with a call that would change everything. "Mrs. Matthews, this is Agent Kim. I apologize for the delay in contacting you, but federal investigations require thorough vetting of all evidence." My heart started racing. I'd almost forgotten about the upload in the joy of married life and building my new business. "What did you find? Your documentation was extremely helpful. We've completed our preliminary investigation and found substantial evidence supporting your allegations. We're moving forward with a formal investigation." "What does that mean?" "It means we'll be conducting interviews, reviewing financial records, and potentially seeking search warrants. This process will take several more months. But I wanted you to know that your evidence has been corroborated." "Have you contacted Meridian?" "Not yet. We typically don't notify subjects of investigation until we're ready to take action. But Mrs. Matthews, you should know that once we do move forward, your role will likely become public." I sat down heavily. How public? Media attention is possible, depending on the scope of what we uncover. The dollar amounts you've identified would make this a significant case. "Agent Kim, I need to ask you something. Am I in any legal danger for providing this information?" "Absolutely not. You're protected under federal whistleblower statutes, but you should be prepared for Meridian to challenge your credibility once they learn about the investigation." After hanging up, I called Logan at the fire station. "They're moving forward with the investigation," I told him. "It's really happening." "How do you feel about that?" "Scared, relieved, and grateful that we had 3 peaceful months to just be newlyweds. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it together." But neither of us were prepared for just how big this was about to become. At 4 p.m., I stood at the back of our decorated backyard, my arm linked with my father's, watching 150 guests rise to their feet. The string quartet began playing Canon in D, and suddenly nothing else mattered except the man waiting for me at the altar. Logan stood beneath the flower arch in his dress uniform, looking more handsome than I'd ever seen him. His eyes were filled with tears, and his smile could have powered the entire city. "Ready, sweetheart?" my father whispered. "More than ready." We began walking down the petal-strewn aisle, and I felt every worry, every fear, every concern about Meridian and federal investigations melt away. This was what mattered. This moment, this man, this life we were choosing together. Riley, gorgeous in her navy bridesmaid dress, winked at me as we passed. Logan's firefighter buddies stood at attention in their dress uniforms. Our families beamed with pride and joy. When we reached the altar, my father kissed my cheek and placed my hand in Logan's. "You look incredible," Logan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you," I whispered back. The officiant began speaking about love, commitment, and the journey that had brought us to this moment. As we exchanged vows, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. "I promise to stand by you through every challenge," Logan said, "to support your dreams, and to love you unconditionally for all the days of my life." "I promise to build a life of honesty and integrity with you," I replied, "to face whatever comes together, and to love you with everything I have." We were so lost in each other that we almost didn't notice the commotion starting at the back of the reception tent. A man in a dark suit was speaking urgently with someone near the gift table, holding what looked like an official document. Our perfect wedding was about to get complicated. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and Logan and I shared the sweetest kiss of our lives. Our guests erupted in cheers and applause as we turned to face them as husband and wife. For once in my life, everything was exactly as it should be. The weather was perfect, our families were beaming with joy, and Logan looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman who'd ever lived. During our first dance, he whispered in my ear, "No regrets about anything?" "Only that it took us so long to get here," I whispered back. The reception was magical. Riley gave a hilarious maid of honor speech about my obsessive wedding planning. Logan's firefighter buddies performed an embarrassing but endearing serenade. My father cried during his toast about watching his little girl become a strong, independent woman. "To Harper and Logan," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us all that love and integrity go hand in hand." If only he knew how prophetic those words would prove to be. As the evening wound down and our guests began to leave, I felt nothing but pure happiness. Whatever consequences might come from my decision to contact the FBI, they felt distant and manageable. "Ready for our honeymoon, Mrs. Matthews?" Logan asked as we loaded wedding gifts into his truck. "More than ready, Mr. Matthews." We spent the next 2 weeks in Tulum, completely disconnected from work, social media, and anything that resembled stress. For 14 blissful days, we were just newlyweds exploring cenotes, eating incredible food, and falling even more in love. It was the calm before the storm, though we didn't know it yet. The storm would start with a phone call 3 months later, but for now, we were perfectly, blissfully happy. And that happiness would sustain us through everything that came next. When we returned from our honeymoon, I threw myself into building Matthews Compliance Solutions. Starting a business was terrifying, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my career, I was working for my own principles instead of someone else's profit margins. My first client was a small engineering firm that had heard about my background through industry gossip. They wanted help reviewing their government contract procedures to ensure they were bulletproof. "We don't want to end up like Meridian," the owner told me bluntly. "Whatever you charge is cheaper than federal prison." Over the next 3 months, I slowly built my reputation in the compliance consulting world. Word traveled fast in the government contracting community. If Harper Matthews was reviewing your procedures, it meant you were serious about operating ethically. "You're becoming famous," Riley told me during one of our weekly coffee dates. "People at Meridian are talking about you like you're some kind of compliance superhero." "How are things there?" "Tense. Really tense. Keen keeps having closed-door meetings with legal, and rumor has it they've hired a crisis management firm." "Any word on layoffs?" "Not yet, but people are updating their resumes just in case." I felt guilty about that. Whatever Meridian's executives had done, the rank-and-file employees were innocent. But I also knew that protecting them wasn't my responsibility. Protecting taxpayers from fraud was. "Riley, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest." "Shoot. Do you regret helping me? Because if this all goes public, they'll know you provided the documents." Riley was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Harper, 15 years ago, we started at that company together as naive kids who thought we were going to change the world. Maybe we're finally getting our chance." That afternoon, Agent Kim called with the update I'd been expecting and dreading. Mrs. Matthews, we're ready to move forward with the investigation. You should expect media attention in the coming weeks. 6 months after starting my consulting business, the careful world I'd built came crashing down with a single phone call. Mrs. Matthews, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. We're running a story about federal fraud charges against Meridian Consulting Group, and we understand you were the whistleblower who provided evidence. Would you like to comment? My blood ran cold. I'm sorry, what charges? The FBI arrested 3 Meridian executives this morning, including CEO Linda Rowe and VP Keene. They're being charged with conspiracy to defraud the federal government of over $40 million. I sat down heavily in my home office chair. After months of wondering and waiting, it was finally happening. Mrs. Matthews, are you still there? I need to call you back, I said, hanging up. Within an hour, my phone was ringing constantly. Local news, business publications, and legal trade magazines all wanted to interview the woman who'd brought down a major consulting firm. Logan came home from his shift to find me hiding in our bedroom with my phone turned off. The whole firehouse is talking about it, he said, sitting beside me on the bed. Harper, they're calling you a hero. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I just ruined hundreds of people's lives. You didn't ruin anything. You exposed people who were already ruining things. That evening, I forced myself to watch the news coverage. Seeing Mr. Keene and Linda Rowe in handcuffs was surreal. These were people I'd worked with for 15 years, people I'd respected and trusted. Federal prosecutors say the scheme involved systematic overbilling on government contracts, the reporter announced. The investigation was triggered by evidence provided by a former employee who discovered the fraudulent activities and was subsequently terminated. They didn't name me, but it wouldn't take long for someone to connect the dots. Are you ready for this? Logan asked. I don't think anyone's ever ready to become the center of a federal fraud case. But ready or not, my quiet life as a compliance consultant was about to become very public. The media attention brought consequences I hadn't anticipated. While most coverage was supportive, the scrutiny was intense and invasive. Reporters dug into every aspect of my life, my marriage, and my new business. But the person who paid the highest price was Riley. They fired me yesterday, she told me over coffee, her eyes red from crying. As soon as my name came out in the investigation, they said I'd violated confidentiality policies by providing documents to unauthorized persons. My heart sank. Riley, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to hurt you. I knew it was a risk when I helped you, she said. But Harper, they're also claiming I was part of a conspiracy to damage the company. Their lawyers are threatening to sue me personally. That's ridiculous. You were protecting the public interest. Try explaining that to my mortgage company. I felt terrible. Riley had risked everything to help me expose the fraud, and now she was facing legal and financial consequences while I was building a successful business. Riley, I want you to come work for me. Full salary, benefits, and I'll pay for your legal defense if Meridian follows through on their threats. Harper, you can't afford. I can't afford not to. You're the reason any of this was possible. Besides, you understand compliance and HR better than anyone I could hire. Are you sure? Absolutely. Partners stand by each other. Riley's hiring turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. Her HR expertise and understanding of corporate culture made her invaluable as we grew the business. More importantly, it was the right thing to do for someone who'd sacrificed her career to support mine. Sometimes doing the right thing costs more than you expect, Logan observed that evening. And sometimes it's worth every penny, I replied. But Riley's situation reminded me that whistleblowing isn't just about the person who speaks up. It affects everyone around them. That knowledge would shape how I advised future clients about creating safe channels for reporting problems. Not every story has a perfect ending, but every story teaches you something important about the cost of integrity. By the time we returned from Mexico a week later, our quiet suburban street looked like a war zone. News vans lined both sides of the road, and reporters with cameras waited on our front lawn. Mrs. Matthews, can you comment on the federal charges against your former employer? Did you know about the fraud the entire time you worked there? How does it feel to be responsible for bringing down a major corporation? Logan parked in our driveway and turned to me. Want to make a run for it through the backyard? No, I said, surprising myself. I think it's time I told my side of the story. I got out of the car and walked straight to the cluster of reporters. Logan stayed close beside me, ready to intervene if things got out of hand. I'll make one statement, I announced, and then I'd appreciate it if you'd respect our privacy. The cameras focused on me, and suddenly I was speaking to the entire country. 15 years ago, I started working for Meridian Consulting Group as a junior analyst. I believed I was joining a company that operated with integrity and served its clients honestly. For most of those 15 years, that's exactly what I saw. When I discovered evidence of fraudulent billing practices, I did what any ethical employee should do. I reported it to management. When management chose to bury that evidence instead of addressing it, I was faced with a choice. Stay silent and protect my career, or speak up and protect the taxpayers whose money was being stolen. I chose to speak up, not because I was disgruntled or seeking revenge, but because $42 million in taxpayer money deserves protection. I was fired 5 days before my wedding for discovering this fraud. I was investigated by the FBI on my wedding day, but I don't regret my decision because doing the right thing is more important than keeping a job or avoiding inconvenience. That's all I have to say. Thank you. As we walked into our house, Logan squeezed my hand. That was perfect. But when my phone started ringing with job offers and interview requests, I realized my life was about to change in ways I never could have imagined. Over the next month, the Meridian scandal dominated business headlines. The Justice Department announced a plea agreement with Mr. Keene, who admitted to orchestrating the billing fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence. 2 other executives, including Linda Rowe, were indicted on federal charges. The conspiracy was even larger than Agent Kim had initially suspected. 12 companies had been involved in the scheme, inflating government contracts and splitting the profits. The total amount of fraudulent billing exceeded $130 million over 5 years. My name was eventually leaked to the media, along with details about my termination and the evidence I'd provided. The response was overwhelmingly supportive, but there were also critics who called me a traitor to my former colleagues. Harper Matthews destroyed an entire company and hundreds of innocent jobs, one former Meridian employee told a reporter. She could have handled this internally instead of going to the FBI. Reading those comments hurt, but they also strengthened my resolve. Every news story included details about the taxpayer money that had been stolen, the veterans programs that had been underfunded, the infrastructure projects that had been delayed because of the fraudulent billing. Riley called me every few days with updates from inside Meridian. The company was laying off employees, losing contracts, and facing bankruptcy. But she also shared something interesting. "Harper, you're not going to believe this," she said during one call. "Some of the employees are thanking you." "What do you mean?" "They're saying they always suspected something was wrong, but were afraid to speak up. A few people have told me they're relieved the truth finally came out." What about Mr. Keene's supporters? Most of them are quietly looking for new jobs. Turns out, loyalty to a criminal isn't a great career strategy. The most surprising development came from Agent Kim, who called with an unexpected offer. "Harper, the Justice Department is expanding our white-collar crime unit. We need consultants who understand corporate culture and can help identify fraud patterns. Would you be interested in working with us?" "Working with the FBI?" "As an independent contractor. You'd help review cases, train agents on corporate compliance, and occasionally testify in court proceedings." It wasn't the career I'd planned, but it might be the career I was meant to have. While I was considering the FBI's offer, other opportunities started appearing. 3 law firms contacted me about joining their white-collar defense practices. A major accounting firm wanted to hire me to head their fraud prevention division. 2 universities offered me positions teaching business ethics, but the most intriguing offer came from an unexpected source. "Mrs. Matthews, this is David Chen from Chen & Associates Compliance Consulting," the caller said. "I've been following your case, and I'd like to discuss a business opportunity with you." David turned out to be a former federal prosecutor who'd started his own firm, helping companies implement ethical compliance programs. His clients were corporations that wanted to avoid the fate that had befallen Meridian. Companies are scared, he explained during our meeting. They're realizing that one employee with a conscience can bring down an entire organization. Instead of trying to silence whistleblowers, smart companies are hiring people like you to help them stay clean. What exactly would I do? Design compliance programs, train employees on ethical decision-making, help companies create cultures where people feel safe reporting problems internally instead of going to the FBI. You want me to help companies avoid getting caught? I want you to help companies avoid needing to get caught, he corrected. There's a difference between preventing detection and preventing wrongdoing. The offer was tempting. Double my old salary, equity in the firm, and the chance to shape corporate behavior on a national scale. But there was another opportunity that excited me even more. That evening, Logan and I were cooking dinner when I brought up an idea that had been forming in my mind. What if I started my own company? Doing what? Compliance consulting. Like David Chen, but focused specifically on government contractors. I know that industry better than anyone, and I understand exactly how fraud happens and how to prevent it. Logan grinned. Matthews Compliance Consulting? Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? 2 weeks later, I filed papers to incorporate Matthews Compliance Solutions. My first client came from the most unexpected source imaginable. Harper, you're not going to believe who just called, Riley said, her voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Oh. Thornfield Industries. They're one of Meridian's biggest former clients, and they want to hire you. I sat down heavily. Thornfield had been involved in some of the largest contracts that Meridian had defrauded. If they were calling me, it meant they were serious about cleaning up their act. What do they want exactly? Complete overhaul of their compliance procedures. They want you to design a system that ensures nothing like the Meridian situation ever happens again. The irony was perfect. The company that had unknowingly been part of a massive fraud scheme wanted to hire the woman who'd exposed it to make sure it never happened again. 3 days later, I sat in Thornfield's executive conference room, facing a panel of senior managers who looked appropriately nervous. Miss Matthews, the CEO began. We want to be clear that Thornfield had no knowledge of Meridian's fraudulent activities. But we also want to ensure that we never fall victim to such a scheme again. What exactly are you looking for? A complete audit of our contractor relationships, new procedures for verifying billing accuracy, and training for our staff on identifying red flags. You understand that this process will be thorough and potentially disruptive? We understand. We also understand that the alternative is federal investigation and criminal charges. Over the next 6 weeks, I dove deep into Thornfield's operations. What I found was a company that had been essentially operating on trust, assuming their contractors were honest because auditing was expensive and time-consuming. You need to verify everything, I told them during my final presentation. Every bill, every service claim, every expense report. Trust is good, but verification is better. The Thornfield contract was worth $150,000, more than I'd ever made in a single year at Meridian. Word spread quickly through the government contracting community. If Thornfield was hiring Harper Matthews, other companies needed to as well. Within 3 months, Matthews Compliance Solutions had 8 clients and a waiting list. I was busier than I'd ever been, but for the first time in my career, I was working for myself and my own principles. 6 months after my wedding day arrest, I found myself back in federal court, this time as a witness for the prosecution in Linda Rowe's criminal trial. The courthouse was packed with reporters and former Meridian employees. Linda sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking defiant despite the mountain of evidence against her. Miss Matthews, the prosecutor began, please tell the jury about your discovery of the fraudulent billing practices. For 2 hours, I walked the jury through my audit findings, the evidence I'd uncovered, and the attempts to bury my report. I explained how the fraud worked, who benefited from it, and how much money had been stolen. Miss Matthews, why did you contact the FBI instead of trying to resolve this internally? Because internal resolution had already failed, I replied. I had reported my findings to management, and they chose to bury the evidence. At that point, I had a choice: stay silent while taxpayer money continued to be stolen, or speak up and protect the public interest. Were you motivated by revenge against your former employer? No. I was motivated by the knowledge that $42 million belongs to taxpayers, not to corporate executives who falsified records to steal it. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee seeking attention, but the evidence spoke for itself. Bank records, email trails, and testimony from other witnesses had created an overwhelming case. During cross-examination, Linda's lawyer asked, "Miss Matthews, isn't it true that you've profited significantly from destroying your former employer?" "I've built a business helping companies operate ethically," I replied. "If you consider preventing fraud to be profiting from destroying my former employer, then yes, I've profited." "You've made more money in 6 months than you made in your final year at Meridian." "That's correct. It turns out that helping companies stay out of prison is more valuable than helping them commit fraud." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Linda Rowe was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. As I left the courthouse, Riley caught up with me on the steps. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like justice," I said. "Finally." 1 year after my termination, I received an invitation that made me laugh out loud. Matthews Compliance Solutions is invited to submit a proposal for compliance consulting services, the letter read. It was from a company that had emerged from Meridian's bankruptcy, essentially the same business with new ownership and a desperate need to rebuild their reputation. "They want to hire you to fix the mess you helped create," Logan observed, reading over my shoulder. "Actually, I helped expose a mess that already existed," I corrected. "Now they want me to help them build something better." My business had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. I had 12 employees, offices in 3 cities, and clients ranging from small contractors to Fortune 500 companies. We were booked solid for the next 8 months. But the real satisfaction came from the impact we were having. Companies that implemented our compliance programs were winning more government contracts because of their reputation for integrity. Employees felt empowered to speak up about problems before they became criminal conspiracies. "You know what I realized?" I told Logan over dinner one evening. "What's that?" "Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me." "Even getting arrested on our wedding day?" "Especially getting arrested on our wedding day. It showed me that doing the right thing isn't always convenient or comfortable, but it's always worth it." Logan raised his wine glass. "To doing the right thing." "To doing the right thing," I agreed. But as we clinked glasses, my phone rang with a call that would open an entirely new chapter in my career. "Miss Matthews, this is Congressman Bradley from the House Oversight Committee. We'd like you to testify about corporate fraud prevention at a hearing next month." My story was about to go national once again. The House Oversight Committee hearing room was intimidating: high ceilings, formal portraits, and 20 congresspeople sitting behind an elevated bench that made witnesses feel like defendants. But I wasn't intimidated anymore. Over the past year, I'd learned that speaking truth to power wasn't just a responsibility, it was a privilege. "Miss Matthews," the committee chairman began, "you've become something of a poster child for corporate whistleblowing. What would you say to other employees who suspect wrongdoing but are afraid to speak up?" "I'd say that staying silent doesn't protect you. It just protects the people who are doing wrong." I was fired for discovering fraud, not for reporting it. If I'd stayed quiet, I would have eventually been fired anyway when the scheme collapsed. "But you've also profited significantly from your whistleblowing. Some critics say you've turned corporate betrayal into a lucrative career." "Congressman, I didn't betray a corporation. I exposed a corporation that was betraying taxpayers. And yes, I've built a successful business, helping other companies avoid the fate that befell my former employer. I consider that a public service." "What changes would you recommend to protect whistleblowers and prevent fraud?" "First, stronger protections for employees who report wrongdoing internally. Second, mandatory compliance training for all employees who handle government contracts. Third, Regular audits by independent firms with no financial relationship to the companies they're auditing. Wouldn't those measures be expensive for companies? Congressman, the fraud I exposed cost taxpayers $130 million. The compliance measures I'm recommending would cost a fraction of that amount. Prevention is always cheaper than prosecution. After my testimony, I was approached by a woman in an expensive suit who looked vaguely familiar. Miss Matthews, I'm Senator Patricia Williams. I'd like to discuss a position with our new Corporate Accountability Task Force. What kind of position? Director of Private Sector Relations. You'd help design federal policies for fraud prevention and work with companies to implement best practices. You want me to work for the government? We want you to help the government work better with private industry. You understand both sides now, corporate culture and federal oversight. It was an opportunity to shape policy on a national level, to prevent future meridians before they happened. Senator, I'm very interested. As I left the Capitol building that day, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 15 years of loyal service, one moment of moral courage, and now a chance to change how business is done in America. Sometimes the best career moves are the ones you never see coming. 3 years after walking down the aisle in my backyard, Logan and I hosted a different kind of celebration. The same backyard where we'd been married was now the site of a small gathering to celebrate Matthews Compliance Solutions' 3rd anniversary. 15 employees and their families gathered around picnic tables, a modest but meaningful group that represented steady, sustainable growth. What started as one woman's quest for justice had become a respected firm in the compliance consulting industry. Can I have everyone's attention? I called out, standing near the spot where Logan and I had exchanged vows. 3 years ago, I was fired from my job 5 days before my wedding. At the time, it felt like the end of the world, but sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. I looked around at the faces of the people who'd joined our mission. Former federal agents, compliance experts, and analysts who shared a commitment to preventing corporate fraud. We've helped over 150 companies implement ethical compliance programs. We've prevented fraud before it happened, and we've created workplaces where integrity isn't just encouraged, it's expected. But most importantly, we've shown that one person with courage can change things. Each of you has that power. Each of you can choose integrity over convenience. Logan stood up from his chair, holding a beer. To my wife, he said, who taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to stay silent when something is wrong. To Harper, the group echoed. As the evening wound down and our guests helped clean up, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The scared woman who'd been fired on a Tuesday afternoon had become someone who testified before Congress, built a successful business, and helped shape how government contractors operate. Any regrets? Logan asked, appearing beside me with a fresh beer. About getting fired? About any of it? I looked around at our modest but meaningful gathering, at the business we'd built carefully and sustainably, at the life we'd created together. Not a single one, I said. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you teaches you who you really are. And who are you really? Someone who won't stay quiet when something's wrong. Someone who believes that doing the right thing is more important than keeping a job. I can live with that. Good, I said, pulling him close, because that's who you married. In the distance, sirens from Logan's fire station called him and his colleagues to help someone who needed them. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and help companies build cultures of integrity. We were both in the business of making things better, one day at a time. And that felt like the perfect life. They fired me the week of my wedding, after 15 years of loyalty. So I sent one file that changed everything,